Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of whatever this ends up being called. Because last time it was called Worship Talk, and tonight it's called Worthy, a worship podcast. Still workshopping the name, Michael, but wanted to say thanks for everybody who tuned in last time and who's here tonight. I'm really excited to just talk about Scripture, to talk about music, to talk about Jesus and the Word, and worship. And hello, Ellen. Nice to see you tonight. And Avery and Susan. And Avery says, "Hello, Bo's friend. This is my friend. This is my friend Michael. He is a worship pastor in. Tell us where you're from, buddy."
Did you forget? Is that
Yeah, this is exactly what this is.
I'm in High Point, North Carolina.
I knew it was North Carolina. I didn't know the name of the city.
That's fair.
Yeah. Michael and I went to college together at Belmont University in Nashville, and he is a great friend. You're one of those friends that, I know that if I ever needed someone to talk to, if I was going through something and I needed someone to talk to, obviously I could talk to Susan, but after I talked to Susan, if I needed to call somebody, I know that I could call you and just kind of, lay it out there, and that you would have my back and just listen and impart your wisdom to me. So
that means a lot, man. I feel the same.
I hope so. I hope you do. Yeah. Talisa, Jason, Mason, hello everyone. Sarah, nice to see you all on. We're going to talk about a couple of things tonight. Last time I had this huge long list because I thought we were going to be just bam, 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 just down the list answering questions, and it didn't turn out that way. We were on for almost 2 hours. This is not going to be like that. This is going to be a lot shorter than that.
Well, that's why it's a different name.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what it's called next time. We had to rebrand because last time was so long. Yeah. So I wanted to just start by saying, thanks for everybody for coming. Thanks for all the comments and the shares. It means a lot. It helps Facebook. I'm not trying to get 1,000 million subscribers or whatever. I think I can speak for Michael, just want people to hear about the hope that we have in Jesus and the reasons why we worship Jesus. And when you hit the share button, when you make the comments, when you hit the likes, it tells the Facebook algorithm, the YouTube algorithm, hey, people are enjoying this content, and that makes them want to show it to more people. So I do appreciate you guys doing that stuff. Also, if you want to submit a question tonight, we will be taking a brief time to do some Q&A. So if you have a question about worship or about Scripture or about what it is that we do, just put that in the comment section, and we'll look at that towards the end of the podcast. So, Michael, I'd like to start with just a little story time from you. Could you tell us how you got started leading worship?
Yes, I'd be glad to. Maybe from a broad perspective, I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and one of the earliest memories I have of serving in a church is being an acolyte, which is some of the usually younger folks that they'll wear the robes and things. They process in with the candles or the cross, and sit up at the front, and they sort of help out with various things during a service. And so I had this sort of front row seat to these things taking place in worship. And that experience was also really helpful instilling kind of reverence into the worship experience. So that was one thing, is being close in proximity to the front and to the music and the choir and all of that, was sort of like something I was just soaked in from an early age. Um, but then as I got into high school, I went to a couple of different churches, and I discovered that church music was not just the organ and choir, and that there was this whole world of Christian music that spanned all the genres. And so I ended up in a non-denominational church, large youth group, and played music for those events, and then later at a Presbyterian church. And really that entrance was just participating, right? It was like, I can play music and I'd like to play this music and I'd like to use that gift. And so that was just bringing what little I had and saying, here, I'd like to contribute, And I had a mentor at that church named Mike Gordon, and I just cannot say enough how much he influenced me. And he just taught me all the basics and all the foundations and these great skills that were going to serve me even still today. And that was like 17 years ago. And I still think about those things. And so I had an internship after my freshman year of college where I was a youth and worship intern. And that summer was really kind of the first time I had taken the reins in a church service. And so then from there, just opportunities came as I was home in summer or on campus a couple of times. We had events that I was a part of. I guess that's kind of the crash course and how I got to where I am now, which is now a full-time music director, worship director at a church. So
That's cool. So, and I like that you had people in your life who kind of took you under their wing and mentored you and cultivated that that talent and that potential that you had, that God had given you, and and helped point you in a direction where you could use that to influence people in a way that points them to Christ. Yeah.
And I should say too that there was a second phase. There was this phase of learning what it was, almost, I don't know if this is the right word, but almost kind of technically or functionally, the things that have to happen, how you plan well. And so that was one phase. And then at a different church, another dear friend of mine, Randy, he really, and still is, a tremendous mentor in how that goes to the next level into what you were just talking about, the pastoral element of worship and the theological elements of worship, and how it is that you can shape things beyond those basics, right? Like when you're learning music, you learn the basics, then you learn harder songs and different songs and different genres, and then you might start creating your own. And I feel like that was the progression of learning the ropes, feeling, understanding how things work, encountering relationship dynamics, etc. And then you have this kind of growing into your own as a worship leader, as a worship pastor. And so really, yeah, so Randy's been tremendous in that too. So I've had several people.
That's awesome. Yeah. Part of the reason that, right now at our church, we're going through a Wednesday night study in the book of Proverbs, and just a chapter a week kind of a thing. And one of the things in the early chapters that it just keeps coming up is that Solomon keeps talking to his son. Like he just keeps keeps bringing up, my son, listen to this, hear this, receive this, hold on to this. And it's just really been kind of reminding me how important it is for us to pass on what we know, very much like what you're talking about. And I think one of the reasons I want to do this podcast is so that people like you said that was 17 years ago that happened. Well, now there's there's some kid probably in your life that's 17, 18 years old who you need to be that person for now. And with the world the way it is now, and you know, online experiences the way that they are now, there's no reason why we can't kind of pass those things on to even more people than just that one-on-one experience, which is also important. But I'm hoping that this can become a resource for people to, you know, hone their craft and maybe learn from, you know, our mistakes so that they don't have to do the same things.
Yes.
Yeah. So quite a few other people popped on. Hello, guys. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about here? I would like to know. I guess who are some of your musical influences?
In
Yeah,
general,
in general. Yeah.
Well, I let me go with two broad pieces of my musical history. Number one, I was a classically trained pianist for, I had classical
Yeah.
training.
When did you start playing piano?
I was just about 5.
Just about
Yeah,
5.
just before I turned
Wow.
5. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And so
it shows. This guy right here is one of the best pianists I have ever heard in my life. People don't know this, but you and I were in. Sorry, I just hijacked your answer. But
Go.
you and I were in a band together for about 12 or 13 hours.
That's about right. Yeah.
We had a MySpace page even. Do you remember this? It was called This Rescue, except the T was in parentheses. So it was like his rescue or this rescue. Yeah. And I looked it up the other day. It's still up. The page is still up. I couldn't believe it. But it doesn't have any information on it at all. Like they took all the pictures away and everything, so it's just like a blank page with a couple of songs on it. But
also, what people don't know is that we recorded a really wonderful version of Frosty the Snowman, which I still have.
I still have it too. Yeah. And there was another one we did. The Frosty one was great though. It was hilarious. I think it was amazing. But yeah, you start playing that piano and we did at Belmont. I mean, we did some projects for audio engineering students together a few times and just some different. We had different opportunities there. It's kind of a magical place, Belmont for musicians, and
Absolutely.
You would sit down at the piano and it was like you were pulling the song that was in my very soul out, like you were drawing it out of a deep well, and just with the way that you play, and I love it. And you played at my wedding with me. I sang a song to Susan, and you played the piano while I played the guitar. And thank you for that.
Yes. It was wonderful. Yeah. And that's very, very kind words. Thank you. And I just need to add that it's not hard to do those things when you have good material to work with. So you as a songwriter, you've got a gift.
Thank you. Back at you. So who are your influences?
So I was just, the classical background is a huge influence for me. I can't think or function musically without having that running the background. So, think about harmony and music theory and some of those things. Those are really helpful for me in writing as well as arranging, and it allows me to come up with what I think are fairly creative, fresh things to do. The second kind of broad strokes of genre is the punk rock world. That was a home to me for much of kind of middle school, high school, college. Now, still, you can't take the punk rock out of the boy, I suppose, but something like that. But there was just something about that with the energy and the drive, the melodic hooks that they had in those songs that to influence isn't the same thing as like sounds like, so I'm saying, I don't sound like Beethoven. I don't sound like, MXPX, but there are musical elements of those things which have influenced who I am and how I play and how I think, and have made me sort of the musician that I am. But I in a songwriting, kind of just music I like kind of a world, Jeremy Enoch is a big influence of mine. He was founded Sunny Day Real Estate, which was kind of a godfather of the emo world in Seattle, and I'm a big fan of Sleeping at Last.
Oh, you would be a fan of Sleeping at Last. Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favorites. Yeah. He is amazing.
Yeah. So it's beautiful. Yep. So that's some of that. A little bit of that classical influence there. It's cinematic, but the songwriting, right? The poetry, so and the way he puts all that together. So that's a huge influence for me as well. As far as worship goes, I have been influenced a lot by Indelible Grace and their work retuning old hymns to new settings. David Crowder, All Sons and Daughters. I think those, Sandra McCracken, those are all artists that I feel like have helped me see a scope of worship in both content as well as emotion and genre, right? They present a broad and beautiful variety of what worship can and should do for us. Or I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but all those folks have explored different corners, right, of the worship experience.
Yeah. And worship is more than one genre. I mean, if you're gonna, you can't limit it like that. It's just, it would be wrong to say worship is only this, unless it's so broad as to say worship is glorifying God and praising Jesus for what He's done. You could say that, but in terms of its musicality, it could be literally any style of music, as long as it's something where, my attention is focused upward in praising God for who He is and what He's done. So good points. Got a little feedback from my wife. She says your microphone is tapping the zipper on your shirt there. So I don't know if you can use the little thing to clip it together where it stays more in front of your mouth, maybe, so it doesn't hit your shirt so much. I think that might.
I knew this was going to be a problem. I told you I need to get a TV studio like you've got.
This is just a bedroom.
No, does that?
Oh, that is really that? Cute. Oh. You need a cowboy hat, a little boy's cowboy hat on your head now.
I got. That might be able to be arranged. All right, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Just unzipped a little bit. Is
yeah.
Yeah.
It just kept tapping on there. So, we also had a comment from Mason saying, "Punk rock and classical, great combo." So, yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
um, yeah. So okay. So gonna just remind everybody real quick. If you want to submit a question about worship or scripture, how those things intertwine, whether it's worship on the logistical side, the business side of it, I guess you might say, or on the spiritual side, anything goes. We'll do our best to answer questions here in just a little bit. But before we do that, I want to get to kind of our bigger topic for tonight, which is this. It's what I call the car radio syndrome. And there was this time when I was leading worship at a church, and I kind of came in and said, I'm not here today to entertain you. I'm not here today to play the music that you like. I'm here to worship Jesus. And I kind of explained what I meant by saying that everybody drove there that day with their car radio settings different. Some people have their music set towards the front of the car. Some people have it set towards the back. Some people have the bass boosted. Some people don't. Some people are listening to talk radio. Some people are listening to country. Some people were listening to the Christian station. Some people were listening to music streaming it off their phones. Some people were actually listening to traditional radio. Everybody came with different preferences, and they drove there that way. And there's no way that that I or you could possibly please everyone and do it exactly the way that they think it should be done, or that they want it to be done. So the better thing is for us to just all lay that aside, put it at the foot of the cross, and fix our eyes on Jesus and worship. And I don't know how people felt about that. I don't know if it ticked somebody off, or if maybe everybody understood and it was all fine. But I only had one person come up to me after the service and say anything about it. And he came up and he said, "I just want you to know I really appreciate what you said about the car radio." And he explained that he was a coach, a sports coach, and that he kind of lived in this world where he had parents of kids always kind of telling him how they thought he should be running the program and how they thought he should be training and coaching, and who should be playing and who should be backup, or whatever. And I'm not a big sports person, and he wasn't a worship leader, so but we connected over that because it was very similar. We understood each other in that moment. And so my question is, I guess, and maybe I already answered it, but my question is, should you treat church like your car radio? And then the follow-up question to that would be, how do we deal with the wide range of opinions that divide our congregations? Because we're fooling ourselves if we think that everybody has come seeking it to look exactly the same, as everybody else. So, yeah. What do you think? What do you think about all that?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I'm, I'm trying not to think too much about what my stereo settings are in my car and what I was listening to on the way.
I walk to church now. I live 2 blocks from the church. I don't even listen to anything anymore. So, uh,
So let me ask this: when you say should we treat the church like our car radio? Um, should the congregation treat it like the car
yeah.
stereo, or should the leadership
See,
treat it
this is
like the
what I
car stereo?
appreciate about you is that you always want to make sure you understand before you respond. I remember you doing that when we were in college too, and I love it. I really do. Yes, I mean the congregation. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
Which we are a part of, by the way. So
that's true.
it's all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But we do come at different sides, right? We have different perspectives and responsibilities in some ways. But uh, I guess I would say first that I think it is important, at least, to affirm in people that they ought to find themselves in a context which resonates
Mm.
with them. Like you were just saying, the genre of Christian music, what is that? It transcends, worship music transcends genre. So
Yeah.
the fact that we have such a diversity is really part of the beauty of God's kingdom, that we can have high church Episcopal and we can have, a warehouse with lights and sound system, etc., right? Where we're singing all modern songs written in the last
Yeah.
5 years. The fact that, and I don't think that people should feel like they can't look for some place where which resonates with them and they can enter into worship, right? So I do think that's important, because you wouldn't want to go. I'm also an analogy person, right? You wouldn't want to go to an Italian restaurant and demand sesame chicken, right?
That's good.
That doesn't make
That's good.
sense. So I'm not going to march into a high church Episcopal service and complain that they haven't played enough Phil Wickham today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there is an element where you have to find that place which resonates, and so there is an element of preference. But you can go too far, and you can succumb to what I would think of as the consumerist culture, and that I am a patron of this place, and I want what I want when I want it. That's not healthy.
Yeah. And I think that's not necessarily just a church problem. That is a Western, at least American Western cultural problem, broad strokes problem that I think we're seeing more and more. Just the have it your way mentality. Yeah. Like when I lived in San Diego, we had Amazon, not just Amazon Prime, we had Amazon Now, where they like get you what you ordered within 2 hours. And so I just, that's kind of where we are, I think, as a society. Yeah. No, that's a good analogy with the restaurant. And you should. I mean, churches kind of take on a, for lack of a better term, personality. And, it's just like when you're at work or at school or whatever, there's going to be some people that you kind of naturally gravitate toward and are friendly with and become friends with more easily, and there's going to be other people that's more difficult. It doesn't mean you necessarily don't like them, or just it's just harder to, you just don't click as well. And I think churches are kind of the same way. So to your point, you should find a church where you can where you click in, and you fit in, and you are able to serve in a way that brings honor to God and His kingdom. And if that's not where you're currently worshiping, then yeah, maybe the logical thing would be to, maybe I should, pray about it, and maybe I do need to find another place where I fit in better. It doesn't mean that we can't be friends, like, yeah.
Yes, so you're talking about personality,
Yeah.
that church culture. I think the
Uh-huh.
tradition of the church, both in particular, as it is in that exact church itself, but also the tradition at large with the denomination and where it's come from, its particular theology or liturgy. So, all of those things are things to pay attention to with the church. And I guess that's why I asked the question before about who's treating the church like the stereo, because I think it is possible for leadership to enter into a place and think, now, I'm going to choose these things, I'm going to go this direction, without giving much or enough consideration and dialogue with the congregation as a whole, with engaging with that culture and that personality of the church, to make sure that those adjustments are done well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Like I said, it really can be from either side, because we're all part of the congregation. Yeah, and I guess like that could lead to a discussion of just like you personally, in order for you to grow and mature, there are things that need to change over time. And I would argue that the same needs to happen in our churches, that there are some things that, like, if I was walking around still sucking on a pacifier, you would think there's something wrong with that guy. He's 37 years old. He doesn't need a pacifier. Like, you give things up over time, and you move on to newer things as you mature. And the church needs to be the same way. The hard question, I guess, is when do you make those changes, and what do they need to be? But the second part of kind of the sub question that I had written down was, how do we deal with the wide range of opinions that potentially divide our congregations? So let's assume that people don't always think about what's best for the church as a whole, and they do just want what they want, and they want you to know what they want. As a church staff member, as a worship pastor, or as a pastor in general, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? I'm sure you have people share their opinions with you.
Yeah. I will say, yes, I have. I would say what's interesting is that in the last 2 years, there's been a lot less of that. I think there's been a lot of people very thankful to have worship going on in the midst of all that the world has been going through. And so what I think is, that's just a bit of an aside, but when the world shut down, so to speak, some of those things which could be surface issues, right, or not even secondary or tertiary things, but way on the periphery, preference sorts of things, sort of got brushed aside. And there was a little bit more of that unity around the fact that we had opportunities to live stream a worship service at all or something like that. So that's anyway, an observation related to that question. But I would say one of the very first things that's important is anyone who's come to voice their opinion has done so usually by gathering up a number of thoughts leading to that point, right? It's not usually solely an off-the-cuff, hey, this popped in my head, why didn't we do this, or why this? It's usually a question that's been around for a while, and now at this point, something's happened for them to want to actually articulate that. And so me kind of making that assumption to give them that benefit of the doubt, so to speak, I want to give them my attention and respect that and to enter into a conversation. It doesn't usually help to just field that question on the spot with a pat answer of some kind. There's usually, like I said, if there's something lying behind their question and their preference, and there is something lying behind my decision and our direction, those two things have to be brought out into the open to have a conversation about what's going on there, to get all the cards on the table, because then you can really have a conversation. If somebody asks, well, why didn't we do that, and I say, well, because I think it's a dumb song, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
So that's step one, is to dignify and respect and hear that person, to truly listen and to ask questions.
I would agree with that. Especially if it's the first or second time that they've come to you like that. If it's somebody who's comes to you every week with a complaint, then at some point I think you have a different conversation with them. But if it's once a year, or it's their first time that they've talked to you about something that they're concerned about or that they wish we could do differently, absolutely, I think you hear them out, you give them that dignity and respect, that to try to understand where they're coming from, and to genuinely give it some thought, and see if it's just them speaking, or if maybe it's the Lord trying to show you something that is a need in the congregation, or that He wants to see changed. The kind of second thought I have with that is that moments like those, if it's obvious that it's not the direction that the Lord's taking the church in, is to use that not as a no, that's dumb moment, like you said, that song's dumb, so no, but to use it as a teachable moment, to be a pastor, kind of like what we talked about earlier tonight, but to pastor them and to help them see, because they might not be looking at the big picture. Like, that's something that I feel like I've encountered, is that sometimes people don't know how to step back and see the bigger picture of the church as a whole. And I think sometimes being on staff and hearing things from all over, across the generations, across the congregation, we have sort of almost like we have privileged information in some respects, and it's easier to kind of see how the Lord's moving in things, whereas someone who is only there for 2, 3, maybe 4 hours a week might not be able to see that because they don't have all the information. And so to kind of use those moments of where, they're opening up to you, to open up to them too, and say, consider these things as well, but in a very civil way. And I think about Jesus. If there's anybody who heard opinions from a lot of different people, it was Jesus, because it seemed like everywhere he went, people had an opinion about what he was doing and what he was saying. And I look at him and just how he was always so full of grace and truth, and he didn't have one without the other. He never had one without the other. And so, and that can be a really hard balance to find, especially in the moment, if you're not expecting to hear something from someone. But something that personally I feel like I'm working toward is just trusting the Holy Spirit to speak through me in those moments in a way that is full of grace and truth, so that I can be more like Jesus in my response to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could use more of that too.
Yeah, we all could. Yeah.
As you're talking about that, you're talking about people's opinions and some of that, you said kind of that privileged information. What I don't know if what you had in mind specifically, but for me, I think there is a real practical help in navigating those conversations if you have previously established some sort of parameters, guardrails of your philosophy of ministry. What is worship? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Intentionality. What's the mission and vision of the church? If you have those things in place, and you're in dialogue about that with the rest of the staff, you're not only are you giving yourself a framework by which to move forward, but you're also in some ways affording yourself protection from yourself. Because if my parameters haven't been set and I'm going based on preference or based on gut feeling, maybe those aren't always bad things, but I don't know that I would found a worship ministry on Michael's preferences, right? That wouldn't go very well. At least not for long. So instead, if there are things that you say, here is how my theology and my and scripture inform what we do, you take people to those places and you point to that. So you're not engaging in some sort of a preference battle, an opinion, that. So that I think having that, and like I said, it has to be in concert with whoever's on staff, especially the senior pastor, right? If they're sort of navigating the vision and mission and direction of the church, there needs to be some unity and understanding of what you're doing and how worship plays a role in that, how it's impacted by it, so that you can effectively implement things with intentionality to shape people. And I think if you articulate to folks, here's what's, like you said, what's going on behind the scenes, you get a chance to say that, and you get a chance to say it in and really highlight that it is for the shepherding of our hearts and the long play of crafting and cultivating a worshiping life that is rich and diverse and dynamic. They're gonna feel like, oh, this person, they do have a heart. They do have a heart for God and for worship, and they have a heart for me, and they're truly trying to cultivate that culture.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good advice. I knew there was a reason that I had you on tonight. That's really good. I think that's part of being prepared in season and out of season right there. Just exactly what you just said. So that's very, very good. Very good advice. So let me know in the comments, you guys. How do you like your car stereo to sound? Let us know. Let us know. I had put down. I think I'm going to skip that one about the song.
Sure.
But because that was pretty good discussion. Yeah. So I think we're going to kind of wrap it up. But Michael, dude, thank you for being on tonight.
Oh man, it's my pleasure.
I really appreciate it. I hope that we can do this again sometime really soon. You and I, and I talked to you about this, but I'm even thinking like maybe we pull in 3 or 4 worship pastors one night, and we just kind of have a roundtable discussion about a topic or two. I think that could be really beneficial. Iron sharpening iron, and but yeah, I would love to have you back on very soon. So why don't you tell us where people could find you? You've got music and stuff out there. You said I was a good songwriter earlier. I am nothing. I can't even hold a candle, dude, to you. So let people know, because you've got some really great stuff. I mean, where can we find you?
Well, I've got music on all the streaming platforms. So anywhere you'd like to stream, Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music. I think it's all up there. There's also, you can come, directly to my Bandcamp page if you'd rather do that. That's michaelkuehn.bandcamp.com.
You want to spell Kuehn for the audience out there?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, that's Michael, and the Kuehn is Kuehn. Yes. So, and that's the same thing on the streaming platforms. You can search my name, you'll find that. I've had it's an exciting thing for me is I actually just recently completed a 10-song instrumental piano suite that's based around birds. And it's a longer story. My wife's a photographer. We love birds. She has these beautiful pictures, and I wrote songs, sort of collaborate on that. So
that's cool.
So you'll find that's instrumental stuff. That's really cool. It's not a project I've ever worked on like that before. So it's a really cool outlet for some of what I was talking about, that sort of classical influence to come through. And then there's some more of the singer-songwriter projects available too. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, you guys check out Michael Kuehn. He has some great music out there, and I think you'll be really blessed. And I didn't know you had that instrumental album. That's cool. I've been like really slowly over the last 2-3-ish years working on a lo-fi album that may never ever get done, but it's based on I'm just going to say space. I'm not going to get too specific. I think it's a really good idea, but I hope to finish it one day. Yeah.
Yes. You've heard it here. It's out now. It's public.
I don't think, like, as worship pastors, we necessarily always have to release worship music. Like, we can do other things that are just enjoyable, nothing crude, obviously, but something, other things. Like, I know you've written quite a few love songs for Hazel, and so
yeah,
I think that you guys need to check him out. All right. Well, with all that being said, thank you all for joining us tonight, and I love you, and we'll see you soon. We'll catch you on the Flippity Flip. Have a good one.